Hello, my name is Pedro Neves, and I'm really excited to share a little bit of my research with you. I want to thank the coordinators for this opportunity. So my presentation is called The Neoclassical Body in 1930s Fashion Photography, High Glamour, Fascist Ideals, and Queer Utopias. So I want to start out with a quick overview of the work of two of the main photographers working in fashion in the 1930s. George Huyningen-Höhne, I'm not really sure that is how his name is pronounced, and his friend, lover, and protege, Horst P. Horst. And they both embody most perfectly the neoclassical trend in 1930s fashion photography. Their pictures were explicitly inspired by ancient Greece and Rome, incorporating urns and fluted columns as props and centering statuesque, gleaming white bodies in poses suggestive of quiet strength and luxurious repose that we associate with the Olympic goddesses. Though inspired by the past, Höhne and Horst's work can be considered in many ways a continuation of the path laid out in fashion photography by Edward Steichen in the 1920s. They incorporated the orderly compositions, the sharp focus, and the tendency towards abstraction pioneered by Steichen, whose pictures are characterized by stark contrasts in black and white, and by an emphasis on flatness and stasis, which turned the surface of the picture into a geometricized decorative pattern. The model's bodies, usually quite lean and angular, become one more element in this pattern, being transformed into a two-dimensional graphic silhouette. Now, Höhne and Horst's models are more fleshed out with a sculptural three-dimensional quality to them, but they retain the sense of being first and foremost compositional elements in a very tight, very controlled and balanced image. The bodies are very statuesque, grand, and solid, and the poses, though quite graceful, retain a kind of unnatural, artificial quality. The faces are often turned away or obscured by shadows, hats, veils, or props, and the eyes are directed sometimes at something far away beyond our reach. The identity of the models, the sense of there being individuals or personalities, is superseded by a notion of the ideal, which is best expressed by static poses and facelessness. This neoclassical trend in fashion photography was happening in the context of similar fads and movements in both visual and applied arts. In architecture and design, for example, Art Deco similarly combined modernist, cubist-inspired design principles in its use of geometric shapes and clean lines with a sense of luxury and opulence in its choice of materials. There's a desire for nobility in Art Deco, which is manifested in neoclassical flourishes like columns, statues, friezes in bas-relief, and a sense of calm and strength. In the visual arts, we have the wide-ranging movement called Rappel à l'ordre or Retour à l'ordre, that is call to order or return to order. After World War I, artistic movements such as the Section d'Or and Purism in France and the Novecento movement in Italy rejected avant-garde experimentations and their violent, disruptive tendencies and took refuge in so-called classical values, orderly compositions guided by supposedly universal aesthetic and scientific principles, solidity of form, a sense of quiet gravity, timelessness, and monumentality. Often, this came couched in discourses celebrating a Mediterranean or Southern European heritage. At other times, it took a more technocratic turn, as in Purism, the movement spearheaded by Amédée aux Enfants and Jean-Édouard Jeanneret, better known as Le Corbusier, the famous architect, which traced a direct line from ancient Greece under Pericles to industrial modernity. Often regarded in European discourses as the pinnacle of aesthetic accomplishment, Greek statuary had long been a symbol of the bodily perfection, moral purity, and spiritual superiority of Western culture and Western people. And here, the fiction of pure white marble folds into fictions of virtuous white bodies. When harnessed to modernism, neoclassicism updated those myths to the industrial age, legitimizing modernity and European domination through a sense of rediscovery of the eternal rules of geometry, order, and rationality. Most disturbing is how fascism and Nazism utilized neoclassical aesthetics as an ideological weapon to legitimize their violent totalitarian regimes. Ancient Rome and Greece stood for a golden age of power and glory that Mussolini and Hitler were going to revive. Now, all of this begs the question, what is the relationship between these uses of neoclassic signifiers in fascist art and their use in fashion photography, especially as it pertains to the human body? Now, certainly the models' bodies in the photographs of Höhne and Horst are presented as paragons of youthful white femininity and are celebrated as models of perfection. But I believe there are some crucial differences. For what is the ideal of femininity celebrated by fascist art? When they are not depicted as emblems of motherhood or as the pure, healthy peasant girl, women in fascist and Nazi art are allegories and embodiments of abstract concepts like victory, the elements, the figure of the athlete. There is a monumental, powerful quality to their bodies. They are more authoritative than they are graceful. The values they embody are collective. They stand for the strength, the purity, and the power of the mythic Italian people, or of the Aryan race, or of the party, or of the nation. They urge sacrifice, the dissolution of the individual into an all-powerful collective under the guidance of a higher power, a unifying leader. They are obsessed with hard masculinity and subservient femininity, and they aim at producing active bodies who will construct, often through their violent destruction and warfare, the glorious future of the 1,000-year Reich. What makes fashion photography different is its emphasis on glamour. According to researcher Judith Brown, glamour is an aesthetic that privileges stasis over movement, unproductivity over productivity, and values artifice and surface effect over notions of depth and truth. It emphasizes sensory pleasure, not struggle and sacrifice. It is an aesthetic highly coded as feminine or effeminate, and therefore perverse, deceptive, and unserious. Following Elspeth Brown's analysis of photographic glamour as a transatlantic queer production in the interwar years, I believe the ancient Greece of Höhne and Horst is not quite the same as the ancient Greece of the fascists and of the more conservative strains of the Retour à l'ordre. It is not the so-called cradle of civilization or of white supremacist notions of Western superiority or the glorification of a pure moral past in opposition to a decayed, corrupt present. They offer instead a glimpse into a queer utopia where amoral beauty, playfulness, pleasure, and a languid indolence reign supreme above nationalistic calls to action and homophobic moral pressures for conformity and respectability. Its use of columns, statues, and urns is ornamental in a way that clashes with these supposedly classical values of purity, restraint, and sparseness championed by technocratic modernity. Theirs is a frilly, frivolous antiquity where gay desire can be expressed in a codified manner through aesthetics. Hopefully we can talk about all this in more detail when we meet in the colloquium. For now, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.